everybody. Good evening. This January 17th. Happy New Year to everybody here and watching. We'll start out with our land acknowledgement. On January 17th, 2024, we acknowledge that the sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for this land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. All right, I will call the meeting to order at 6:05. First item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. So does everybody have a copy of said agenda? Yes. Any questions, comments, additions? No? Okay, so I will have somebody move to approve the agenda, please. Courtney, thank you. And could I have someone seconder, please? Heidi, thank you. All in favor? Motion carried. We'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. Does everybody have a copy of the previous minutes? And I believe they're from November. Everybody has a copy? Okay, so could I have someone move that, please, to adopt those? Corey, thank you. And could I have someone second them, please? Deb, thank you. All in favor? Motion carried. And just wanted to, while we're on the topic of the minutes, I wanted to bring something forward. And just if you go to the second page of your minutes from last meeting, and under the heading of accessible sidewalks, and just wanted to acknowledge the Safe Sidewalks of Canada undertaking the assessment of sidewalks that Director McMahon had mentioned, and I think that's a very good thing, and I think, and perhaps we could maybe talk about it at a future meeting, but I really feel like maybe that should be something that could be emphasized to the public, because I'm not sure of the awareness of the public of that undertaking from them. So if everybody's in agreement, we could talk about that in future. Mayor Panko, you might.
Well, I wonder if it's a matter of even the Accessibility Advisory Committee putting out a statement about this program, and then the town can circulate it on social media to make sure people are aware that there is initiatives and maybe some ideas on timelines and how it fits in with our active transportation plan and improvements that people should be able to expect in coming years.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to really raise awareness in different ways that, social media, as you mentioned, and other things that way it's accessible to everybody with all different abilities and access to technology or not. So I think we will table that for now and perhaps get some of that awareness going talk about it at our next meeting if everybody agrees with that. All right, so I think we have that done. So we'll move on in our agenda to did the adoption minutes. So disclosures of conflict of interest or monetary interest. Anybody have anything to disclose? Seeing none, we'll move on to delegations. We have none this evening. Our first priority issue is the downtown design guidelines, and I would invite Richard Grant to give us some insight into that. So, Richard?
Good afternoon, everyone. The Downtown Core Design Guidelines, essentially, they offer a framework for how developers and landowners can design their businesses and any of their residential buildings in the downtown core so that we sort of have a bit of consistency. So we're looking at trying to take cues from the past by learning about the heritage of downtown for Smith Falls, as well as use other design considerations to make downtown more livable and enjoyable. So for the accessibility committee, what I'll be looking for from you guys is to provide some feedback on the guidelines on how to make it more accessible, more inclusive. So that's sort of what I would like, so that developers and landowners who are reviewing the guidelines can incorporate that into any of the work that they're doing for the downtown core. So things like automatic door openings and non-slip ramps, like extra lighting, things like that. Those are simple things that could be done, but those are the design considerations that I'm looking for that landowners and developers can use to incorporate to their own building considerations. Also, I would like the feedback within a week's time. I know that's a short notice, but if it's possible. And if you have comments for me now, I'd also accept them as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Richard. I did receive the report from you on this, and about fourth paragraph down on the first page. Does everybody have a copy of that report? I think Director Clark did send it out.
I'll pull it up here too.
Okay. That would be wonderful.
Oh, just kidding. First day in new technology. There we go.
Fourth paragraph, you said?
Yeah. Just where it talks about accessibility design considerations, and then it refers to page 12. And I was just wondering if there was a separate document that we're talking about page 12, or if there was something on that particular page.
Right, so there should have been the guidelines attached to the report. No, maybe the guidelines. So I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to see the guidelines at all, or just the report itself.
Just the report itself.
Do you have a jump drive at all, or no? Do you have the report anywhere, or the guidelines at all? I can pull them up.
Probably in your emails.
Well, maybe was it the PDF that you sent me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I will hold on, dump this. One moment, please.
Sure.
Possibly more than 1 moment. We'll see.
Yeah, you can pull up page 12, actually.
I will do that. Okay, now I'm gonna see if I can use. Working off 2 computers here. I feel real fancy.
Yeah. Take skill.
Nope. Just poor planning.
What is the downtown core like? Where from to where? Would you count like from like the lights here
Yes.
all the way down to Chambers? Would that just be
That's
downtown?
right. Well, that's like the width
Yep.
of the downtown core, but it also extends all the way to William, as well as all the other sides to Elmsley.
Okay.
Yeah, just to give a bit of a geography. The guidelines do give a bit of a map so you kind of understand where downtown core is.
No. Okay. Look at those flowers. They're really pretty.
Yes. I wonder who did that.
Not me.
So wait, stop.
Yep.
So go up a little bit.
Okay.
So that page there where it goes to the map.
See if I can.
So that sort of gives you a general sense of what we're talking about when we say the downtown core. So it's broken up into 3 quadrants. The green is the main downtown core, and then the pink would be the downtown fringe because it's like we're talking about the outer edges of the core, and then the blue would be the waterfront. Yeah, just for more of a context. I can scroll down to the accessibility considerations. There we are. So this is just the written portion for the accessibility considerations, just for those who weren't able to review it in detail before.
Did we get an attachment of this?
No, I didn't realize that Richard, so this is my fault. I didn't realize Richard sent me a separate document. I didn't get it until after I posted, so I'll circulate this as well.
Okay.
Would you want it? Would you be able to just kind of go through the
Yeah, sure.
core considerations?
Right. So the first thing is that we're trying to encourage the developers and landowners to go and adhere to the Accessibility of Foreign Ontario Disabilities Act. So that just means that when you're having an application, typically that's a consideration when you're having a building permit. That's something that's a general part of the review process. But we also encourage people to ensure that entrances, for example, are well defined with lighting and doorways for awnings, and that storefronts have access at grade with the sidewalk. And I know that a lot of the buildings now don't have that. So that's sort of the thing when it comes to making the places more accessible, is that they're working with existing buildings that have long-standing barrier issues. So they're trying to, I guess, come up to code and come up to standards. And so these guidelines are trying to remind people that that's what we're looking for. And then tactile walking surface indicators. I'm not familiar if the committee knows what those are. I'm not sure if you guys are you familiar with the tactile walking surface indicators? Yes or no?
No.
So a good example is that when you're coming to the corner of a sidewalk and you see the bumpy surface and trying to figure out why is it like so metally, that's to indicate for people who can't see that they're heading to the edge of the sidewalk. So that's the indicator that you're nearing the edge of the road. So that's an example.
It's really smart.
Yeah. Now, most people won't really be dealing with those sort of things because they're not dealing with the public realm, but that's just an example of the accessibility considerations that would be needed. But if we're having a general conversation, I would just want to be curious as to what accessibility considerations you would be thinking that would be needed for downtown, just in general.
Anybody have any suggestions? Corey?
So for like access to businesses, I would say for sure ramps or like a way to get down their steps at least.
Mm-hmm.
All of the
Did you-
shops downtown have like at least one.
They're all
big
heritage
step,
buildings too is the issue,
So they're like
Yeah.
grandfathered in.
Yeah. basically.
No, I don't. So, go ahead, Courtney.
Are the downtown buildings like grandfathered in since they are so old? Like, do they have to adhere to the, because don't all businesses eventually have to have ramps?
Yes, that's right. All businesses do. So the grandfathering doesn't really work in that sense.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you can understand that, yeah, maybe in the past that's how things were done, but we're trying to build all the buildings up to code. So when the opportunity comes to redevelopment, that's what happens. So they're trying to just adhere to the act as well as to make sure that the building is more inviting for people.
So definitely ramps then.
Yes,
So
ramps
all
for
the
sure.
buildings downtown.
Does anybody have any other suggestions? Mayor Pinkham?
Sure. So I think when we're redoing it, like our own infrastructure and we build our own buildings, we ensure that they're at minimum AODA and building code compliant. And when new construction happens, even in the private sector, with this, it's the same thing. But the challenge we have, of course, is all of the old buildings we have around. And with especially being built on a hill, well, even against the side streets as well, it creates further challenges. So when we redid our community improvement plan last year, and a community improvement plan is a mechanism the municipality can use to support financial initiatives that we define as important to the community. So we can't just walk around and say, we're going to give this business cash just randomly, or we have to have a mechanism to do it. That's through the CIP. So we created and encouraged accessibility improvements through the CIP. So we have dollars available for businesses to do it. And we had one or two applicants.
Well, applicants?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about applications because that's not.
I mean, we're just one approved.
At least one I'm familiar with.
So I was a bit disappointed, especially considering the deadline coming with the ODA, that more businesses would not take advantage of it. But any accessibility improvements are still going to be fairly expensive. And that becomes a challenge. If you're a business downtown, especially a small business, one, if you're renting, who's going to do it? The business or the landlord. Secondly, it's not just a matter of getting access into the building to be able to work within the building, and the bathroom improvements as well. Because right now, obviously, so many of them would not be barrier free. So I think it's important that we as a committee probably consult with the community and get some feedback on what are the biggest barriers to enabling full accessibility within the community. And that's why it's so important we have people on this committee who have that firsthand experience and can help us understand. Because the deadline's coming. And it's not just a matter also of a deadline, it's a matter of we want to make our community accessible and works for everybody. These barriers have to leave. And it's not just say, physical barriers, it's how else do we ensure that everyone can be accommodated and as needed. I know we were in Iceland, Reykjavik, a year and a half ago, I think it was, or 2.5 years ago anyway. And their downtown is on a steep hill like us, like ours, even steeper probably. But they have mounds around the entrances. And essentially it's like pouring concrete at the level of the entrance and then it flow off in every direction. That enables you to approach that from any angle. And while that might be something that could be considered for downtown, for certain places, it does, of course, encroach onto the sidewalk and then create some challenges when it comes to snow removal. And Reykjavik, as much as it's called Iceland, it's quite temperate and they don't get much snow right in Reykjavik, but they would still have to deal with it from time to time. So I'm not sure if that's and putting temporary ramps out are probably not a good solution either. And for the buildings that are even at grade or close to grade, then you have, as Courtney indicated, steps inside. So how do you overcome that? So I know if there's building design guidelines that can be, that can help building owners and business owners find suitable methods of adapting, or what can be done.
Yeah, I guess I could look into, specifically how to adapt to older buildings that have those sort of challenges in terms of barriers. And where, I guess, getting up the ramp, for example, would be challenging. Snow clearance is definitely an issue.
And I wonder with our CIP, so let's say it's going to take some design and engineering work for a business to make those adaptations that are needed. And let's say there's $5,000 to get all that done.
How much do you think?
Does the CIP fund that type of work or just the actual construction?
From what I know, the CIP funds the design work that goes into the accessibility components. So like it helps with making an application, helps by having your design done, but I don't think it funds the whole thing. I think only does a portion. And I think that may be one of the bigger issues for developers if they are looking to get the work done and they're not sure what's it going to cost and how much they can put into making sure this work happens. Ramping, having a good ramp is only a part of it. I'm sure there are other things they could do, but the ramp's probably one of the biggest things that they could do.
Automated door openers.
Do you know what the deadline is offhand?
2025, isn't
But I don't know if it's January 2025 or end of 2025.
End of, it's in my email, let me confirm that.
I think it's January 2025.
Oh, for some reason I was thinking April.
And sadly, we were hearing nothing from the province when it comes to providing any type of financial support or even guidelines for implementing the appropriate changes. So that's frustrating itself. If they expect everybody to be there, which this has been 15 years, is it? Since it was first implemented?
15 or 18 years.
So they expect, oh, maybe they don't. Maybe that's why they haven't said much.
So in regards to the heritage buildings that have to be done, is there the possibility of hitting roadblocks in how things can be done to a heritage building? Right? Because usually a heritage building is a classification that has certain standards to uphold that heritage name. Have you looked into any or had anybody talk about any of those issues where they're saying this building is heritage and we can't change
certain
the door
features?
frame? Like, are there ways that have been considered to kind of help with that kind of thing too? Like, it's a heritage building, it can't be changed in certain aspects, even though the law says things need to be done.
I'll have to look into it because I'm not sure exactly what the ramifications would be, because I understand that accessibility comes first, but I don't know if that decision comes from the municipality where they're enforcing it, or the act where they have to follow legislation, or the developers having initiative. I'll have to see what comes first.
I'm just curious to know, because we know we have heritage buildings in the area,
Right?
and maybe they're kind of deadlocked too, not sure which way they can go. I don't know.
As I understand it, the town designates the building as heritage.
Yeah.
And the features of the building, which are heritage. So the town hall is an example, the heritage building. So when we did the work, knowing we had to improve the accessibility, so the front door downstairs here is simply sympathetic to the structure and the designation. So I think as long as work was sort of sympathetic to it and in keeping with it, I don't think it would be an issue. Unless someone on the Heritage Committee really, or someone who would want to really stick to it. But I think for the most part, if it could be appealed to council, I think in the end, council could probably be the decision-making body.
That's why I thought that the older heritage buildings would be like grandfathered in and exempted having to make those changes, because I didn't know what changes could be made to heritage buildings, like you said. It's
Well, yeah, because we don't know
Yeah.
what made that building.
heritage.
Was it the actual colonial style to
Oh,
it,
I see,
or
I see.
the overall appearance?
The other two big examples downtown are the Rideau Hotel and the old post office. And they were inaccessible before.
Right.
Now they are accessible, and so with the Rideau Hotel, access is gained on the side rather than the front.
Right.
That was a requirement when to approve the redevelopment to ensure that was enabled.
What about the old post office?
It's also accessible from the back.
This, yeah.
And those, if I could, those are delineated in a bylaw. So that all of the heritage features are actually detailed for each heritage facility or heritage designated building in a bylaw. And so we could actually go see what makes them heritage. So to answer your question, it's available. We could probably send it around. I don't know if you have access to, well, Mary would have access to it, I think. The heritage
I would too,
bylaw.
well.
Yeah, and so if you want to see, just out of curiosity, or how we can make things.
I was
change
just
that.
thinking more in the lines, like maybe that's what's holding some
Stopping them.
people off from thinking, like, I know I need this done, but at the same time, they may just kind of be torn between what can be done because of this status or that. And it was just a thought maybe that,
Yeah, most of the
Something that
commercial
could be
buildings
addressed.
downtown are not heritage.
That's what I was going to say. That's true.
They're not?
No.
No.
Really?
They may have interest, some of them, but they're not all designated. Only the post office and the Rideau is, I think the Rideau is also designated as well.
The library, this building.
I heard
At the risk of bringing up something.
Yeah.
Larry?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard that a lot of downtown was heritage buildings, and that's why they like.
Yeah, probably heritage but not designated by municipalities being significant. Ones that burnt were the best ones.
Unfortunately, yes.
Do you want that in the minutes or?
I think the biggest barrier probably is cost.
Yeah.
Because even, and Rich, you see the applications coming in, but even to put in a fully accessible bathroom is probably $20,000.
Yeah. So like CP funding goes part of the way, but most business owners don't necessarily want to start the whole thing without being able to finish, right? So once you start making modifications and you have recommendations, you kind of compelled to finish. Yeah. So most people, unless they're really sure that they have the funds to carry the whole thing through, they're unlikely to begin. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they also don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody else have any other?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So would the semi-permanent like ramps count as being accessible or not though?
Not accessible?
Like would that, like if they had the ramps that they can put in their storefronts and put them out every day, would that count as being technically accessible or no?
I actually don't know. I mean, in terms of the criteria, it seems to make sense that the ramps would be accessible, but I think you have to consider the fact that they're encroaching on the right of way. So I don't know how long they'd be there to be considered accessible if they're only there part-time.
I know in some municipalities, Stratford being one that I've been to, they have, a number of the businesses have the ramps, and they simply have a doorbell at the front. And someone will come out and provide bring the ramp out and provide assistance. Because even a ramp by itself is not going to enable accessibility unless you've got an automated door too, right?
Mm-hmm. And even just like some of those ramps you can just put in and out, they're not the sturdiest, so.
And it depends on the grade, because for every inch you're going up, you got to come out a foot. So if you've got a 6-inch rise, you need a 6-foot ramp. That's all. In many places backwards, we would have that kind of issue. You have a full step up in many cases, off the backwards into the building.
Well, these questions have been really good, actually. Lots of things to think about. I didn't really think much about how that. I mean, I knew some of the buildings were designated heritage, but I didn't think that there was a perception that the reason why they're not accessible is because they're really old. I mean, yes, that's partly true, but also people just don't really see accessibility as a concern unless it's for them, right? So I think that's a largely part of the issue, is that they're not really designing for everyone in mind. And if it's not easy, it's not done. So.
Madam Chair, I know we've sort of been speaking out of turn here, but I wonder if we should be communicating with the downtown businesses, and maybe it's going through our DBA, because they have the membership contact details of every business downtown, and see why they haven't.
That's a good question.
And maybe we should circulate the AODA requirements and ask if they have plans to be compliant by the required date, and also provide them information on the CIP.
Yeah.
And how we can assist them in doing so. Because maybe it's just
They don't know.
out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah, it could be. Corey.
I have one more question, saying the deadline again. Is there any of town buildings that aren't fully accessible currently that need to get there by 2025?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know how many there are? Roughly even?
Roughly, yeah, I'd have to go back and look at my comments that my staff have given me, but we do know, and there is a plan to tackle the major things.
Mm-hmm.
The intention, yeah. KG answer, yep.
She's on.
What you're asking. What I can tell you is that, not to be cagey on purpose, but we do have, most of our buildings are mostly accessible. But as you see with this facility is a good example, because we have a number of systems that are supposed to communicate with each other, so fobs and accessible buttons, some you can open that door because it's unlocked, but you can't actually, unless you have a fob, open the accessible button. So like and downstairs, same thing. And so we have to figure out how to make those pieces communicate. And so we're working towards that. So technically, yes, but we're not accessible on a technicality. So we're working towards bringing that stuff to the forefront to try to figure out how we can make those things talk and make them a bit better. It's also, I find it really confusing why you have to, even just exiting this building, push the accessible button, get out of the way as soon as humanly possible, and then go through the door. And so again, I think to Richard's point, the person that was designing it didn't think about, they thought, well, while I'm going out the door, I'll just hit the button and I'll be fine. Except that when you're using a mobility aid, you need to figure out how to get the heck out of the way fairly quickly. So that's not accessible. So again, technically compliant. In reality, I don't want somebody to get hit by a door. So we're trying to source systematically through all of our facilities. What else do we have that's like that in our municipal facilities? What is defined as a facility? What is that? All of those pieces. And then we have it on a big spreadsheet. That's a lie. We have it on a number of large Post-it notes in an office that will be put into a spreadsheet, and then we're going to systematically attack them.
So the town will be compliant then on time then?
On time? That's the hope anyways.
The time is 6:35 right now. And I would never promise anything that I'm not able to follow through on 100%, and because I don't know, there's so many realities that could be competing and challenging, and finances are one, and timing is another, and so on and so forth, and contractors and things. And so, but I can tell you that we are making every stride to race to that finish so that we can be compliant, because we want to be a leader. I think we have this is just my soapbox, but we have a moral and an ethical obligation to be a leader in this community. And so it's hard for us to go to the DPA and say, could you get your businesses in line, if we can't even figure it out? So,
And I'm sure that will come up.
I'm sure will. Yeah, on Facebook.
But I was just looking up here, if I read it correctly, it's January 1st,
Yeah.
2025. So it's basically got to be done this year. Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
There's a reason that the budget asks for my department. It's big.
So far, it's still in there, right?
So we're still in there, yeah.
Well, the other thing that's important to understand is also, it's not just from a municipality standpoint, accessibility for the public. It's also for employees.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though, let's say, this end of the building is technically accessible, the upper floor of the central school portion, the other end of the building, is not.
Yeah.
And so if someone up there required accommodations of some form, we'd have to do something, because no elevator over there.
Slow steps, but I think steady. Is this the first meeting for the committee, or is this like they've been running since last year? Oh, I guess it's fairly new.
Yeah,
Awesome. I didn't know that.
maybe. I think we started in September.
Yeah.
We haven't had too many meetings yet.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. Now they have a big work plan. I noticed that on the agenda, so
Mhm.
I'll let you guys get to it. But thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for your time, and you've brought some wonderful points forward, as have many around the Horseshoe, and so thank you, everybody. And perhaps we can, now that we're going to have access to that other document, we can have a look at it, and if something does come up. Richard, when did you say you'd like those suggestions by?
Within a week, if
Within
it's
a
possible. If not, it's okay. I mean, I'd always welcome the comments either way, because this will be updated over time. So whenever, but within a week would be nice.
Okay.
You all should have an email in your inbox with a request to get stuff back to me. I'll collate and give to you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. All right. So that wraps up that discussion. Very robust and very, very good discussion. Our second priority issue being the committee work plan, and Director Clark is going to lead that discussion, so I will turn the floor over to her.
Thank you. So there are paper copies, but there's also copies up here. I didn't realize that you guys can't see this.
Yeah, that's very small.
I'm trying to like.
Some of us can.
Yeah, maybe it's actually, I haven't been to the eye doctor in a while, so maybe that's my problem.
No.
I'll try to make it as big as
that's
possible.
better.
There you go, here we go. So there was a document that I was provided from the previous iteration of this committee that we had a brief conversation around this horseshoe. And so I sort of distilled a little bit what we were we didn't need to have because it was in the terms of reference, and sort of cut those pieces out. But I felt, and we can talk about this, that it's nice to have just a reminder what the committee mandate is, so that when we're looking at the actual activities of the work plan, which are, I just sort of carried what I thought was important forward that was sort of in the original document, and then added one that I really hope we can do. But we'll obviously build that out. But I think it's important to have this part, the committee mandate, to reference back to, just so that we have it readily accessible. So we can cut this out if we want, but I just thought it was helpful to have. And this committee mandate comes directly from the terms of reference. So this is what was approved by council. And if we want to change it, we probably should also then change the terms of reference. So I'm really hopeful that we're good with this. So. And then moving on to the objectives, this comes from the previous document. I also thought this was a good idea, and partly because how my brain works is we need to, our overall mission, what we're trying to do, and then the objectives of sort of more of what drills it down a little bit. So I think this is helpful again for me. Whether it's helpful for you guys doesn't. I was going to say doesn't matter. That's not the case. It does matter. What is helpful for you does matter. What is helpful for me does not. So just if we want this out or round it out in any way, I'm happy to add or remove as needed. And then looking towards the key deliverables. And so this is sort of the meat of what we're hoping on to do. I pulled again from the previous document. There was a lot more that was out there, or that was sort of iterated within that document. I think part of it is we can remain somewhat broad unless we have identifiable specifics that we can think of within. So I didn't want to presume to know all of the pieces that we would be wanting to put in here. I think just as an example, Mayor Panko, your thoughts about connecting with the DBA and consulting with them, I think that would be really helpful if we put this into the work plan, because that's an actual tangible activity we can do. I think I also put in here advice and consultation. I was really glad that actually, so we were accidentally overlooked on the original Center Street consultation because they had a consultation with various advisory groups, and we were accidentally missed in the invite. And so I'm really glad, because I know that some folks were, they actually sent to the wrong Stephanie, I think. So I was like, why didn't we get invited? So anyway, we were ultimately able to go. I think some of you went. And Lucy, I think you're going to give an update on that after. So that's awesome. But it's important that when Richard was having a conversation with me, he actually asked, can I come to the advisor committee? And people are acknowledging within the town, within my colleagues, that they would like to consult. And so I think that's a key piece for us as well, to be that consultative process, and they can use us for our information and give us, an opportunity to share ideas. So whether it's public consultations that we make sure we go en masse to, or we have presentations, and Dr. McMahon as well, he came because he wanted to make sure that he was having a dialogue. I think that's really important and such a critical opportunity for people to, especially my colleagues, to hear, because we often just get mired in the work and don't stop to really consider what we're doing. So that made me sound bad. That's not what I meant. Wait, don't stop to consider the bigger picture sometimes, because we're so in the weeds. So just to briefly go over it, one of the things that was on the original document was to get onto the strategic plan. If you look at the strategic plan, which incidentally is in front of some of you in a very pretty document, you'll see that accessibility is a priority the council has decided that needs to be pushed forward in a multitude of ways. And so I think we can check that off from the previous list, but I would also suggest that we keep it on so that it continues to be a priority. Sometimes if you take things off a list, it doesn't get carried on to the next iteration. So in 2027, when we're back, I don't want to say, like, well, we're accessible, we're done, it's good. Like, that's not, it's an ongoing process. So if you're okay, I'd like to keep this on. And then the other pieces, most of them have come from the first two, accessible beach, accessible parks. Those came from the previous document. I know that Corey, you had also brought up specifically with me about Murphy Park, and we've talked a little bit about that more broadly.
What do we mean by the beach?
Yeah, and so yes, that's accurate. And I also have other ideas. So we have lots of opportunities and areas for beaches. We should make sure that any and all of them are accessible. So I think there's we can work to make sure that that's a priority. 2024, 2025. The idea of, like, we're very focused on active transportation, and Mayor Panko can speak to this too. Not suggesting that you have to, but you could if you wanted to. If the idea of engaging in active transportation and making it an opportunity for everyone to participate in is really critical. In other municipalities where I've been witness or participating in, sometimes active transportation is just more sidewalks or narrow trails, or I think so. I'm excited about the municipality working on a more broad picture. And so part of that from my department is looking at how do we have trail standards that are acceptable? How are they wide enough? Are they multi-use? Does it accommodate someone who's got a stroller and a biker and and somebody else that is trying to get by, so that we're not encroaching on other people's space or the grass or whatever. And so I think having that on as well is really important, because it actually intersects with a multitude of different departments and gives us some opportunity to have sort of keep that in the back of our mind in public works, in community services, in economic development as well. To just add extra work to my colleagues. I'm sure I'll talk to them tomorrow about it. Parking was a big thing that I heard was really important in this town, but also around this table. I know we had talked about parking with Paul when he was here last time. And the curbs and storefronts and those kinds of things. So I wanted to populate to an extent, but I think, and we don't necessarily, subject to what people want, have to continue to have this conversation here tonight. But I would suggest let's think about some actual tangible activities and get those in. So we have the broad stuff, and if there's something missing, I think we can have that conversation and I can add it in. But it would be nice to have now some actual tangible pieces that we could, like with, I want to say tactile kinds of things that we can see that are outcomes. So an example would be for festivals and events. I think a big part of that would be making sure that we do the treat accessibly again. And we have that in here, and that's our plan. And we're going to do that in 24, 25, and 26, and we'll check it off each year. I think that's a really great thing, that sort of thing.
Well, I was just kind of wondering about that as well with festival and events. If all buildings and everything have to be compatible by January 1st, 2025, would that not mean a festival or an event would also have to be in conjunction with that because they're held in public?
If they're on private property, no.
Depending on where the property is. Like if it's held in our park,
Yes.
obviously our parks have to be up to a certain standard by a certain date as well. But whoever's holding the event, would they not have to comply by that time too, to make sure that their event fully covers that? Or is it just simply permanent structures that they're dealing with?
So I'd have to go back. And confirm. I do believe it's facilities, which are understood to be permanent structures. That said, in our special events application, we do ask, are you accessible? I'm pretty sure we ask that because we're wanting people to be hosting events that are accessible to more.
So you state, are you accessible, but are you specifying it kind of what that includes?
I have to confirm. I don't think so. I think we're asking.
No, obviously wheelchairs, but are we talking like visual impairment as well?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and double check the package. So unless anybody else is really familiar with it, but I think that's actually, to your point, we could be more specific around drilling down. Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe for the next meeting, if you or staff have a chance to do a deep dive into the AODA and sort of come back with the most important points that we need, that we have 11 months to sort of plan and prepare for.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we all can. It's a matter of.
Yeah, good idea to,
I can send around
yeah.
the info just
Yeah.
for review. It's been a few months since I've taken a look at it, but yeah.
Questions, Corey?
For the access to storefronts,
Yeah.
I think the timeline needs to be this year, like, so that it's not to be determined. Like, it's got to be 2024.
Well, I think, and I think maybe that's where some of the delay is coming from. People hear that it needs to be compliant by 2025. They're not thinking
That's next
December
year.
31st,
Yeah, the day after.
24. They're thinking 2025,
Exactly.
right? So maybe that's part of the delay as well. People being unclear on when the date is.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, and I think by saying 2025, people think, oh, that's a lot, lots of time. No, it's not.
No.
That time will fly by. So I'm glad that we're having this discussion, and I'm glad that Director Clark is going to bring out the AODA to really grounded discussion and really bring awareness to some of these businesses and as to why do we have to be accessible. And I think that'll really encourage them to do that. So, all right.
Can I just ask, just on that, so we around this table are not able to force anyone to become accessible.
No.
What do we see our role then, just in terms of tangible activities? What is our role in supporting and advocating for people in private business or otherwise to become accessible? So we, I think as a municipality, our organization, we know what we're supposed to do and we're working to get there. What's our role around this table to encourage, coax, cajole, not threaten in a nice way, push people to become accessible?
I think as a committee, we are fully aware of what many different things require accessibility, but we don't necessarily share with everyone what accessibility means, right? So although we know the visual is very clearly a wheelchair needs to be able to go up into a building and safely come out. But what in terms of visual, right? So if you have somebody who has a visual disability, what is their compliance? Do we need to have something in place for them too? And I think as a committee, we need to maybe become more aware of what other accessibility issues there are for people. Even in terms of people who have light sensitivities and other issues that we don't think of because we don't have that particular issue. But there are a lot of communities that are becoming more aware of it. I've noticed for our town that they have a skating time that has become more accessible for people where there's low lighting and low sound and everything.
No sound, in fact.
Pardon me?
No sound, in fact.
Awesome. Just hear the laughter.
No, that side's not.
Oh,
But we did fix it.
We did.
We fixed it. So,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, sorry to
But
interrupt.
that's okay.
I
But
just get really
think,
excited about that hour.
I think, you know, in conjunction with what Sean was talking about earlier, about making sure that you connect with the DBA, who in turn can connect with more of the businesses, that we have that public forum to have them come and talk to us as a committee in an open setting where they can present their questions to open up maybe more possibilities that we ourselves have not thought of. And maybe we can look into that further to find out what other options there are available, and then do like a newsletter summarizing some of these informations at a later date after that meeting to share other ideas, because you don't know who's facing what. As we were talking about with the heritage issues, like we don't know what they're sitting with. We don't know what their businesses are dealing with. All we know is we have a deadline approaching, and we as a committee are here to help get more information out to the community so that they can move forward with their issues.
Yes, I think it's like a big part of it's educate and inform. And honestly, I think most business owners are it's not even on the radar. So maybe it's a matter of if the DBA and Chamber of Commerce, which would pretty much cover almost every business in town, along with this committee, would host an information session. And we can probably get some expertise to get someone from the government, or the March Dive, or somewhere who has the expertise to talk about everything that needs to happen and how to get there. So sort of lower those barriers for businesses and give them an opportunity to come out and learn what they need to do in the next number of months in order to be compliant.
And it really is months. People need to
Yeah, it's 11
think in
months.
that
Yeah.
perspective now that, yeah, it's a year, 2025, but it's months now. It's not years. And I think people just don't quite think
And
of
there
it
seems
that
to be
way.
now maybe there's more online from the province, I would hope, but I haven't seen any, I have no information sent to me never, right, on this.
You know what happens when businesses aren't accessible come 2025? Like, what's the repercussions for that? Because we're saying
Nothing.
we can't enforce it. So, like, what's the point in saying,
Mhm.
oh, you have to be accessible by 2025, and it gets there and nothing's accessible? Are they going to be like, okay, well, 2026 then we'll get you?
Just because we can't enforce it, like as a committee, doesn't mean the province or the town can't enforce it though. Just us as a committee can't because we're.
Could the town enforce it though? Like,
Only if the province had legislation or regulations that would allow us to do so. Today, we couldn't do something the province wouldn't do, like we couldn't step beyond their boundaries, so probably not.
but come January 2025, is that what they're going to say? Like,
Wow. My personal feeling is the province is, they'll just turn a blind eye.
yeah.
And in some ways, I mean, it's, if you got a small business owner who's struggling, and a lot, I'm sure we'll even see business organizations come out and say, well, how can you impose what is a significant cost onto a small business who's still having difficulties? How are they going to finance it? Is the province going to provide financing? And are you going to find enough skilled labor out there who knows how to do this stuff? And engineers and architects are going to have to do some redesign in a time frame. I mean, it's probably not very realistic at this stage. The province came out 2 years ago and said, we need this. This is coming. Right now, the legislation was put in place by a previous government. And we haven't heard much from this government about if they intend to follow through or not.
Just quickly, it doesn't, so I'm on the provincial website and it says accessibility in Ontario, information for businesses, and it's really very positive. It doesn't tell you what happens if you don't. So, and it's possible they don't actually know yet. It's possible that they haven't built that legislation that far. I mean,
That's on their to be determined list.
yeah. Yeah. So it's, number 1, accessibility improves business. Number 2, AODA toolbox. 3, guides and resources. 4, case studies. And 5, stay in touch. So
Stay in touch.
stay in
You're on
touch.
our mailing list.
Yeah, well, subscribe.
subscribe and like.
Yeah.
Just if I could, I really do think that I strongly agree with Stephanie and Mayor Panko and everybody else who's commented as well, that I think a lot of it comes from education, and I think having a public forum or something along those lines might just educate some of the smaller businesses or the bigger ones. What's out there? What are our options? How can we do this without? Because I think maybe genuinely some of them are thinking this is too big an undertaking. So I think, breaking it down and really allowing people to know that even a small change and just chip away at it and do it slowly, and by doing that, you're going to have great outcome. But I think we need to encourage people of that. That it is feasible. It sounds like it's not, but it is. Yeah.
So I think if I could, just to wrap this up. So what I'll do is I'll send out just a specific email with an ask to this committee to maybe before in the next week or two, if you think of ideas, campaigns. I know we've had a few conversations around the table. What would you like to see that's tangible? I think, the education sessions, things like that are important. And if you want to send me whatever you have, I'll sort of slot it into a broader sort of picture of where things go. If you have timelines, that's helpful. I just put TBD because I didn't have a timeline. I thought it was worthy of a conversation. So let me know what your specifics are. And if there's other things on here that you think we should be tackling, I'll put it in and we can bring it back for the next time and distill it a little bit more. So.
I think if we can get our own communications team engaged now, and maybe it's like on February 1st, it's a notice going 11 months to AODA becomes in force, and then March 1st it's 10 months, and just to try to help ensure that everybody understands. At the same time, along the way, providing more information and just over communicate, because people need to see it more than once before they're going to act.
See? Yeah.
As a committee, would it be beneficial to ask the town to send out a survey to downtown businesses to see if they're even aware of what is involved?
Yeah. Mayor Bingo or
You go first.
Gordon, go over quick.
At our first meeting, I suggested we have a budget for something to speak about.
CIP.
Yeah, the CIP. I think we need to make sure businesses really know about the CIP too, because that's the one that gives the
Funding,
funds. Yeah.
So that'd be part of our communications, and if we have a communication, an open house or something, that we can have a feature on that so people can understand dollars.
But when I was down at the Cozy Cottage gift shop, I was in there and I was telling them how I appreciate that they took it upon themselves to put the ramp in, and I asked them if they accessed the CIP, and they were like, "What's that?" So they didn't even know about it. So a lot of businesses that are saying, we don't have the money to make these renovations, don't even know that there is some funding available for it.
And some businesses might even think they're accessible when to us, they're not.
They're not.
no.
So,
And
it would be nice to possibly have that knowledge for us going forward when we're making suggestions and
Just putting an idea out there. I'm not sure, and I welcome feedback, but I'm not sure that we could maybe talk to our communications lady from the town and see if we can get some messaging out on social media too. Sometimes I think maybe people don't feel like they want to come to an event, but maybe if they could even just have a document to read, that would be something that we'd look at too. Stephanie.
May I make a suggestion maybe that I don't know if we have to make a motion on it, but you're going to follow up, Sean, you're talking about meeting with the DBA and the Chamber of Commerce. Is it possible that we could do a one-page blast kind of covering some of the basics and then having a date set to meet and having people from Chamber there and people from the DBA there, and if you have a provincial person we can get, that'd be awesome. But if we could agree that we could set a date so that we have something tangible, because basically we're down to 11 months now instead of a year, right? Like, it's,
Director Clark is the keeper of the community center.
but if we can establish that in that blast, we want to make sure that, first of all, people know there is a deadline. What it is they need to do to meet the deadline. What is available to help them, if there's other grants that are out there other than the CIP. I'm sure there's lots of building grants and all different things you can apply for. Some of those have deadlines that may or may not have already gone by for the year. But if people aren't even aware that there are these options, if we are, or know somebody who can get those details, basics, we don't have to go into full. And then, so what did I say? People do a blast, and then make sure that they know, okay, here's what we can offer you, and here's a date where we can all meet, throw out those ideas, talk to any, whoever from the committees can be there, and so that we can help them. Because for all we know, like, there's so many people, they're all in the same situation. They all have to do this. They don't know what their neighbor's contending with. For all they know, it could be the same issue, and it could easily be resolved by someone having a general meeting where we can have that all put together and then do a follow-up blast to summarize, here's some great points that happened. If you need more help, contact, so-and-so. But if we can get those things established and set a time frame to have that done, if we can get it done within the next 2-3 weeks, is that something that's possible?
Setting a date, yes. I think we can commit to that. I am just emailing DBA and the chamber, so
Perfect.
before the end of the evening, they will get an email requesting a conversation
Yeah,
about this.
just to give us something tangible to work. I mean, it's great to toss all the ideas around, but unless we actually solidify something that's going to be done, we just kind of keep tossing the ideas, and it goes to different departments. But I think as a committee, I see us, we want to be committed to doing something and making that mark. And unless we establish those dates and times and how we're going to do it, it won't become established as a procedure.
Well, the town did not have to. We were under the population threshold to establish accessibility advisory committee, but we believed it was critically important.
Mm-hmm.
So this group has to provide that feedback to council, things that need to. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
And the DBA and chamber applied to push it through their respective boards. So that's going to be the challenges. I know that the chamber met this morning. I don't know when they meet again, unless they just do an email blast and say it's okay. Put this information out. If it's going to be our event, where we're simply using the DBA and chamber to reach businesses.
Yeah, there are other resources in our community that if we don't work together,
Nothing's gonna get done.
And you have
the
to
more you have together, the more information you can get. But if we don't, as a committee, establish what we're here for, we're not going to accomplish
action
anything.
So that would be something that if you wanted to email me that, I will put it on our list, and when we do it very soon, we can check it off and be feeling pretty good.
I'll watch this later when I get home to remember what I said.
I have lots of lists where I put things on it that I've already done and cross it off and feel very satisfied. And be like, look how much I got accomplished in the last 4 minutes.
Checklist for your checklist.
A little guilty of that too.
Also, maybe as a committee, we can ask maybe the mayor to do this. Maybe email our MPP and see if they're gonna follow through.
I will be seeing them next week. So I can
Any ramifications
Yeah.
is gonna change.
Like, see if they're gonna follow through on this police, or if it's on their radar as a government.
Ashley, I have a municipal conference in Toronto next week, so Minister Cho, I assume, will be there. So if I get a chance to even connect with him, I'll ask him directly.
Awesome. Well, I think we have some really wonderful ideas. So thank you, everybody, for bringing those wonderful ideas forward, and hopefully we can set a date and move forward on that. great idea. All right, so I think our final priority issue of the evening, we can move on if everybody's comfortable to move on. So we'll talk just briefly about the Center Street Revitalization Public Forum that occurred on December 13th. And there is a small document that was circulated around that. So did everybody get a chance to read through it and print it? I'm not going to, I won't go through it verbatim. I'll just summarize the points and then we can discuss further. So basically what it was a public meeting to discuss the potential Center Street revitalization project that will be potentially happening over the next long term. I thought the presenters did a really, really great job of bringing forward accessibility and did a very good job of explaining what they would do to make it fully accessible. So I appreciated that and how they would comply with the AODA. So I thought that was important as well. I also thought it was really great to see that they're thinking about accessibility, and it's very, very early on. In fact, the shovels haven't even gone in the ground yet, and they're already thinking about it, about accessibility. So I thought that was wonderful. They talked about having an outdoor green space that would be fully accessible with benches, sitting areas, that sort of thing. They also talked a lot about access to all the different areas of the waterfront / park area for people with different types of disabilities, whether it be you use a wheelchair or walker, or whether you have visual challenges or anything like that. Parking came up as an issue. So just an overall I got a general good feeling that they are going to have it fully accessible if it does indeed occur. So I was very happy to go and be in attendance and listen to their wonderful presentation. Did anyone else have an opportunity to go to it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Heidi and I were both
We went
there
to the
too,
second
and
session.
we went to the second one, and I found them like, they know the standards. That's their job, so they knew what has to be put in place, but they were very open and receptive to any questions we had.
Very.
And being able to communicate any other concerns that we had in terms of exactly where the trail. I know, Heidi, we were looking at one of the
Well, I was
diagrams.
asking, I mean, it was great to see the plans and you look at them and incorporate it. And I actually asked questions on how they would incorporate the use of what we had existing from the downtown core to get to this new waterfront, because they call it a waterfront development more than the Center Street, because they wanted it centered around the water, but not the fact that when you're coming down, because there's that little way you can come down that's not really accessible, how they showed me and told me the incorporation of using a gradual steep cement with material, how it would what they would recommend of how it be built for the pathways to incorporate wheelchairs and strollers. So it was really nice. And the other thing that I really took out of the special lighting that towns can offer for challenge, like for people with bright lights, it's a special lighting for all the outside lights that can be, which I didn't know about, which was really cool.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
That was neat.
So that was interesting to learn about some of the accessibility that's available that we may not know about from these consultants. So
Yeah, I found
It
it
was
very
really
interesting because they were also talking too about more energy efficient ways to run some of the things as well. Like just their knowledge was great, and they were very informative and very open to any questions that we had. And yeah, just finding out so many things we take for granted that we just don't see them, we don't know, right? So until you ask questions, or we're all learning how to ask questions. And when you're in a presentation like that and you have multiple people who are invested in doing that, it was great to get that perspective from, these are the guidelines that they have to follow, this is where it has to go, but these are the options, just like Heidi was talking about, as to how they deal with that grade, because it's such a steep graded area, that one section. So it was really good to hear how they can incorporate all kinds of accessibility into a plan like that, or multiple plans, because they had different drawings too. So it was really nice.
I hope the other committees don't hear this, but the consultant said that we were the best committee. That's a true story, actually.
Well, we have wonderful guidance, and we're a great team. So I would echo that. So I think either of you two other ladies have any other questions or comments, or if anyone does, I would welcome that now. And if not, we'll move to our next topic. So do we want to move on then, or we're okay to move on? Okay, so it's minutes. This is the agenda. All right, so I think we can now move on, and we've taken care of our priority issues again. Thank you for all your comments and robust discussions. Went very well. We'll move on. We have no correspondence items. We also have no in-camera issues. So we'll leave those for now. We'll move on and discuss our next meeting date. So we will, perhaps Director Clark, you could.
Does the third Wednesday of the month still work for people? Is that something that is okay? I know Jen had mentioned that sometimes her schedule is sort of flexible, so we try the 6 o'clock. It seems like most people can make 5:30 or 6. Does it matter when? Okay. So the third Wednesday would be February 20th.
21st.
That is a lie. It is not the 20th. Just kidding. It is the 21st.
Okay.
Right? That's probably me. And that is, so do we want to do 6? Sure. Okay. All right. I will send a placeholder. And then if we're comfortable with 6 o'clock on the third Wednesday, then not the third Tuesday, like I said, the third Wednesday, then I'll send a placeholder for another series of meetings. And if we do change it, I will delete the placeholder. I was like, what are you talking about, Courtney? And then I was like, whoops, sorry about that.
I was going crazy at first too. I was like, wait.
You weren't here.
I'm so funny.
No, I didn't show up for it, but I was just like, yeah.
Anyway,
I was, because I saw the first one and I was like, wait, am I supposed to be there tonight?
well, I would have called you, been like, where are you?
Yeah.
Okay, so Wednesday, the 21st of February at 6 p.m. here.
Perfect. Okay.
Then before we adjourn, can I ask one question? At our last meeting, we asked for the list of the sidewalks in the downtown core that we're doing. Do we know if we're going to be getting that?
I would have to, if I can answer that, I would have to speak with Director McMunn.
Okay.
I know that he wasn't sure that that was something that would be beneficial for this, just to see, because I think that the request was actually, as I recall, for the holistic list of all of that. So I don't know if that was something that he was wanting to provide, just to manage expectations. So, but I think what we can do is probably ask him to give us an update on where things are at.
Okay.
Does that work? Okay. I can ask him to do that.
And even if we can find out what the plan is for this
Yeah.
year, which areas or which
Yeah.
intersections
Yeah,
we do.
this year. Yeah.
Yeah, I can certainly do that.
Even the result, yeah. Results of the study.
I think part of it is just resources. So if the staff have a gap in other work, then they will take and do an intersection, right? Pull concrete out, put new concrete in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, so I think we can settle on the 21st. And thank you, Director Clark, for taking care of that. So I think we're good to adjourn if everybody's comfortable with that. Yep, okay, so could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Corey, thank you. And could I have a seconder, please? Courtney, thank you.
At 7:20 p.m.
So I will ask all in favor. Yes. Okay, that motion is carried that the meeting be adjourned at 7:20 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Well done.
Have a wonderful